have you ever just stopped and looked at a random date on the calendar? Not your birthday, not a holiday, just a day. Well, it turns out that even the most ordinary-looking date can be absolutely packed with pivotal, bizarre, and world-changing moments. So today, let's just pick one out of a hat and see what we find.
Okay, so on one hand, you have the final dramatic moments of a legendary Wild West outlaw. And on the other, the shocking Oscar win for a quirky, pretty small-budget romantic comedy. I mean, these two things feel like they're from completely different planets, right? So what's the deal? What's the mysterious thread that could possibly tie these two stories and a whole bunch of others together? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is hiding in plain sight.
Yep, it's the date. All of it. Today, we're going to take a little trip through time and explore this incredible, kind of random collection of events that all share one single thing in common: April 3rd.
So, let's start at the beginning, shall we? With some key moments that really helped shape the Americas and forge a brand new nation.
Let's wind the clock all the way back to 1513. You've got the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de León, famously searching for the mythical Fountain of Youth. He lands near what is now St. Augustine, claims the whole territory for Spain, and because he showed up during the Easter season's Feast of Flowers, he decides to call it La Florida. Okay, now let's jump ahead to the American Revolution. The Continental Congress has a huge problem. They desperately need a navy to fight the British, but they have basically zero money to build one. So on April 3, 1776, they got creative.
They authorized something called privateers, and it was a brilliantly simple idea. They basically gave private ship captains official permission to become state-sanctioned pirates. Their job? Go attack and capture British ships on the high seas. A pretty scrappy, but you know what? A very effective solution.
And on this very same day, but in 1865, the American Civil War hit a massive, massive turning point. After a really long and brutal siege, the Union Army finally captured Richmond, Virginia. With its capital city gone, the Confederacy was dealt a devastating blow, and it was a clear signal that the war's end was just around the corner.
All right, let's shift gears and head into another core piece of the American story: the incredible myths and sometimes the harsh realities of the Wild West. On April 3, 1860, a true icon was born. The Pony Express kicked off its very first run, with riders leaving from Missouri and California at the exact same time. This whole horse and rider relay system was an absolute marvel. It promised to get mail across 1,800 treacherous miles in just 10 days. That was basically light speed back then. But the West wasn't always that heroic. This same day in 1876 gives us a kind of less than flattering peek at a legend. The famous lawman, Wyatt Earp, got himself unceremoniously fired from the Wichita police force. Why? He got into a fistfight with a rival candidate for sheriff. Just goes to show you, even icons have bad days. And then we get to maybe the most infamous Wild West event to ever happen on April 3rd. In 1882, the notorious outlaw Jesse James finally let his guard down in his own home. He was betrayed by a member of his own gang, Bob Ford. James took off his guns, he stood on a chair just to clean a dusty picture, and in that one moment of vulnerability, Ford saw his chance. So why the betrayal? Well, there was a massive $10,000 reward on James's head, which was an absolute fortune back then. And for that amount of money, Bob Ford cemented his place in history as the coward who shot Jesse James. Now we're going to leap into the 20th century, where April 3rd delivered some major shockwaves in politics, pop culture, and even crime.
In 1948, President Truman signed the Marshall Plan into law. Now, this was a totally unprecedented act of foreign policy. It authorized $13 billion, which is a staggering amount of money even today, let alone back then, all to help rebuild a war-torn Western Europe.
On that exact same day, in 1948, something totally different was born. A radio show called The Louisiana Hayride had its premiere. Now, it might not sound like a big deal, but it would soon get the nickname the Cradle of the Stars because it had this incredible knack for discovering new talent.
And just think about the impact it had on one 19-year-old truck driver. After a really disappointing debut at the super famous Grand Ole Opry, a young Elvis Presley got his second chance on the Hayride. His performance there, an absolute sensation. It launched the career of the guy who would become the king of rock and roll.
Fast forward 30 years. April 3, 1978, Hollywood sees one of the biggest upsets in its history. George Lucas's Star Wars was more than a movie.
It was a global phenomenon, a box office juggernaut. But when the Oscar for Best Picture was announced, it didn't go to the space opera. Nope, it went to Woody Allen's small, quirky comedy, Annie Hall. A true David versus Goliath moment.
And on April 3, 1996, a reign of terror that had lasted for nearly 18 years finally came to an end. After one of the longest and most expensive investigations in its history, the FBI arrested Ted Kaczynski, the man they called the Unabomber, at his tiny, remote cabin in Montana. So look at that, from Spanish explorers to legal pirates, from Oscar upsets to the fall of a legendary outlaw, we've seen how one single day can hold so many completely different histories.
When you lay it all out on a timeline like this, it's pretty wild to see the sheer diversity of this one day. You've got a new continent claimed, a capital city falling, an outlaw's myth ending, a huge cultural upset, and a modern manhunt finally concluding. All of it happening on April 3rd. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. If one single, seemingly random day can contain this much drama, this much history, and this much surprise, what incredible stories are waiting for us, hidden in all the other days of the year?